Good evening. The news gang is here, fully constituted and all present in the flesh. Tonight, bullets, buttons and bad manners in Uganda. Just who bewitched the Pearl of Africa? Also on the show, who or what stopped the reggae and which beat is next? The fits, the starts, the twists and the turns on the wobbly bridge to a united Kenya. Plus, pandemic problems, soaring numbers, suffering doctors and weeping MPs. Where is the antidote? On the memo, you're on your own with the virus. Kaikai kicks the big elephant in the BBI room. On Yvonne's take, legislators weep and ask for helicopters. What about you? Will the real boss of Professor Magoha now stand up, pleads the punchline? And on my angle, I ask which lenses you're using in the big BBI jungle.
This has been the darkest month since March, when the pandemic struck. Since the beginning of this month, we have recorded some 14,927 positive cases. And I remind you that this is only the middle of the month, and lost some 274 people. These are Kenyans from all walks of life: politicians, priests, policemen, teachers, business people, and all sectors of our society have been hit.
A dark month indeed, and that is almost the theme of November so far, and we will talk about that in detail a little later on in the show, but a different kind of darkness across the border to the west, Uganda, where people have been on the streets, people have died, and it's all about politics. I think we have some images that we can show you from the streets of Kampala.
How do you push a presidential candidate like that? How?
All right, Linus, you've covered Ugandan elections many times and generally followed what's been happening in that country over the years. What on earth is going on in Uganda as we speak? Because a lot of people are worried. I mean, it's not the sort of thing that you expect in this day and age around an election.
Nothing that has not happened before, Joe. This is elections Uganda style. And you would remember just a few days ago when they had the presidential nominations where candidates were presenting papers to the Electoral Commission, and Robert Chagulanyi was arrested that same day. There was a candidate who actually arrived at the clearance without shoes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it is, and when you look back, what has changed is the players in terms of the opposition. This would have been Kizza Besigye before. And now it's Bobi Wine, who is only 38 years, nearly half the age of President Yoweri Museveni. And I've never understood, as many times as I've covered Uganda, I've never understood why it has to go this way. And for the following reasons. In all fairness, President Yoweri Museveni is actually a popular candidate. He is a strong political figure in Uganda. I think he's capable of winning a free and fair election. I think he's capable of beating his opponents hands down. In terms of ideas, in terms of his reach as an incumbent, he can do this in a very, very peaceful way. But you'll always wonder why this happens. And when this happens, it puts Uganda in a very, very awkward place. Awkward in the sense that when you look at the quality of violence we see there, for those who ever missed the conduct and behavior of the apartheid police in South Africa, here are your images. This is exactly how they behave. You treat fellow citizens in a way that you would think this is about war. Have we seen them firing live ammunition? Yes, we have seen them firing live ammunition.
And they're aware those are human beings. It's not like there's some beasts coming from the wild.
You can't believe this treatment. And as a neighboring country, we should be honestly quite sorry about this, because Uganda is a nice place. And Joe, you remember when we went in to cover the 2011 elections with the entire team, we enjoyed the assignment. We enjoyed the assignment, the mood of the elections and all that. There's something about the people there that they really connect. As Kenyans, we can connect very well with them. They have a very vibrant political environment. I've covered countless rallies at the Kololo airstrip, whether by NRM or Kizza Besigye, and they are as colorful as Kenyan rallies get.
It is true.
But then there's this ugly side, Joe, that is really persistent, and that is the role of arms in the politics of Uganda.
Yeah.
It's so militarized, but I want to even downgrade that further and say it is also militianized. So it's not just the uniformed police that will terrorize people. Today you have seen images of people in civilian clothes doing horrible things. What do they remind you of? If you remember the images of the civil war in Sierra Leone, civil war in Liberia, these guys make the streets of Uganda look like that. And the point I also want to make finally, Joe, is this is completely unnecessary. Yoweri Museveni, a person I've interviewed twice and also covered many times as a journalist, is actually capable of winning free and fair elections. Why he should let his people resort to this is another thing.
It is unbelievable.
And I remember, just one last thing, when I asked him the question about the behavior of his police when they mistreated Kizza Besigye, he said, these are young men, you know, I can't behave, I can't control them. But when you look at this, and there is a soundbite I don't think that we have, where he sounded very, very angry, and it sounded like he had expressed instructions to the police to behave in this manner. Quite ugly.
And this kind of thing, I mean, we know that the police act only based on what they perceive to be the official line. I mean, they cannot do this sort of thing if they know for sure that there will be disapproval from the highest level. And I think because this is a political contest that has been militarized, the police basically weaponized for political reasons, there is no way that the police would just be doing this without the knowledge and the comfort that they actually have a cover that goes up that high. I remember in 2006, I covered the election in Uganda before the 2011 one, Linus, you were talking about. And I remember Kizza Besigye was arrested so many times that many times he was not available to campaign. So they actually had to do his effigy that was being moved around rallies because they had to still put together some sort of campaign. And Jamila, this is quite interesting coming in a region where we are talking about regional integration, which sort of implies that we have similar values. We have, for example, the African Union that speaks a lot about good governance and all of these things. And it almost looks like this can happen and they get away with it.
And we should be concerned as the neighbors, right next door neighbors, because when you hear about 16 people dying in a single day, which was today because of the protests, it is worrying. And why the protests? The protests happened because on Bobi Wine's social media page on Twitter, it went around that he had been arrested somewhere called Luka Town, and those were the images we are seeing. And who's Bobi Wine? Bobi Wine was a former musician who turned into a political opposition candidate who's running for president, and he appealed to a huge percentage of the youth because of his music and the messages that he was passing. He was actually criticizing the government through his music. And look at the population in Uganda. Over 74% of the population in Rwanda are people aged under 30 who Bobi Wine appeals to. That's one. And two, social media, I think, is an angle here that had not been there, I think, in previous elections in terms of how information is going around. The videos of Bobi Wine being arrested, the fact that he had been arrested, that sparked the violence you've seen in the past 2 days was because of the tweet that had been sent out in his account saying that he had been arrested. And then now we see all these images. They are spreading all over social media. We've seen these images here in Kenya. What about what is going on in Uganda? People are seeing what is going on. And as you said, President Yoweri Museveni is quite popular, especially Pulendani Ndani in Uganda.
Areas,
Yes, he's very popular as a president. What we're seeing in Kampala and in Jinja is because of what people in those towns are seeing, and they're not happy seeing a candidate that they feel maybe speaks to them. If you look at the population of the youth you're talking about being treated that way. Since he announced his candidature, Bobi Wine has been arrested numerous times, and I don't think this is the last time it's going to happen.
And Yvonne, from experience, we know that this sort of thing does not diminish the popularity of the person being targeted. In any case, it actually lionizes. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, there are probably a lot of people, even around the world, who are wondering what on earth is going on. What is so much at stake that whole battalions of police officers will be deployed just to go and arrest one man, and on grounds that nobody can really understand? I mean, where on earth do people get arrested, for example, when they're going to present their nomination papers? I mean, it's unthinkable that this can be happening in this day and age, and almost without any kind of recourse or without any concern that someone somewhere would say, hey, what you're doing does not make sense, it's not a good thing.
And that's right, lionizing him. He's known as the ghetto president. And just to add on to what Kai was saying, that M7 could easily win an election, I think, and I stand corrected, that Bobi Wine might actually be the man that presents the greatest challenge to Museveni since he took over through a coup in 1986. Like Jamila said, over 74 people being young, many of them knowing no other president.
I was in class 8 back then.
Yeah, I will not say where I was. Oh my gosh, honestly, I will not even. Oh dear. What a nursery. Yeah, I wasn't in class 1 yet. So that tells you that over 74% of the population have only known, you know, Museveni as their president. And he actually does take note of the fact that, you know, Bobi Wine is a young candidate who could whip up the young population. Take a look at what M7 has done over the last couple of days, weeks and months that tells you that he is threatened by Bobi Wine. He's lost a considerable amount of weight. Let no one tell you anything else. Many have said this is a strategy for him to look younger, to look youthful. All of that jogging he's doing. And the press-ups, which I have to say are in bad form. Like his hips dip lower, which is not supposed to happen anyway. Don't get me into that.
Give the man a break. He tries.
Well, he's 76, so, you know, I'll give him a break for that. But all of this trying to look younger, losing weight, shows you that he's very cognizant of the threat that Bobi Wine poses to him. And I think it's also important to note that this is you know, a presidential race with, what, 11 presidential candidates, all of whom except one have now halted their campaigns, you know, until Bobi Wine is released. You know, a man who's known military, who's come in through that, has been particularly harsh with quashing, you know, alternative voices that we've seen in the country. And right now, Bobi Wine is sitting in a place called Nalufenya, which many Ugandans will tell you is a place notorious for torture. So, you know, there's a lot of concern for what's happening. And if you just want to take a look at what's happening, I think in Uganda that we all need to take a look at, not just there, but around the world and around Africa, is the rising voices of young people, which is exactly what we saw in Nigeria as well, you know, with the killings that we saw in Lekki. And so the young people are a force that many countries in Africa are going to have to contend with as we're all going through, you know, a series of election periods throughout the continent.
Yes, Francis. In fact, I want to start by reading 2 tweets. One from George McLeod. He says, it's really sad that the rest of the African continent is mum on the issue of Bobi Wine being denied his democratic rights. Then Calvin Skellen says, if Ugandans are truly fed up with Kaguta Museveni, then they should wake up on the elections day and vote in Bobi Wine to the last man. Otherwise, anything else is mere hula baloo. You see the positioning. But I look at it this way. Increasingly, the old order is giving way to the new order, and not just in Uganda. You saw a bit of you know, a bit of social media uprising in Tanzania in the last elections not so long ago. And you see, today's voter in 2020, 2021, 2022 moving forward is not the voter of 1990. Is a more agile, more knowledgeable, you know, more excitable
restless,
voter,
if you like, yeah.
Restless if you like. So I don't know whether the tactics of yesteryears will work for Museveni now. And not just for Museveni, but also for other presidential candidates, incumbents, so to say, in Africa, who would want to use violence, force, as has been the norm previously. The elections that are being conducted in Africa now are being conducted at a very interesting time when, I mean, many people are on social media. People are now communicating on social media. They know what is happening. So the old order, as I said earlier, is slowly giving way to the new order.
But it's a painful transition if it is one, Linus, where you see these kinds of tactics that one would have seen in the 80s, actually, and a bit of the 90s in Africa. And we are talking about 2020, rearing its ugly head again, that trend, at a time when we are talking about younger voters, people who are more woke, as they say, who are more sort of in tune with global trends, who can be mobilized through social media and that sort of thing. Yet you actually don't feel the indignation that you would expect with this kind of thing, given how out of place it ought to be. And I think some tweet that Francis, you were reading, that Africa is mum. Who would speak in Africa today? Who has the moral authority, the moral high ground to cast the first stone, as it were?
Nobody has the moral high ground, Joe, not even the African Union, which tends to speak rather too late in the day after events have already happened. But looking at the Ugandan situation, a transition will not happen without institutional structures in place. We have all lost count of the number of times President Yoweri Museveni is running for president. Yeah. He's been there since 1986, changed the constitution twice to allow him to run again for...
Someone juxtaposed him with all the US presidents who have been there during his...
Yes, he's just about to welcome Joe Biden as the next president. And there is a problem right there. Transitions don't happen when leadership doesn't will them as well. Especially when you look at a person like Yoweri Museveni, whose hold on Uganda is so strong because of the history that is attached to that. Remember, he fought a 6-year liberation war between 1981 and 1986. And when he took over on the 26th of January 1986, he sort of acted as a military leader. Remember, even right now, a number of times when he feels he needs to send a message across the country, he dons the military uniform. So can we describe Uganda as a multi-party democracy? I doubt that is an accurate description of what happens in Uganda. Not when presidential candidates are arriving for nominations without shoes. That is not a multi-party democracy. Not when the police can take away the leading opposition contender and store them away in a police station. That's not part of democracy. Uganda is still, sorry for this comparison, where we were in the 70s and the 80s.
It is true.
Where the level of intolerance is so high. Yeah. And then they are doing this as a mere ritual. Museveni has done this not because he cares about democracy, but because it's a therapy to make the country feel like you've gone through an election. So I'm going to have another fight, legitimize himself after every 5 years. So it's the biggest lie. And you know what? The AU will not say anything. I've not seen anything about the eruption in Ethiopia, in Tigray, which is a way more serious situation than what we are seeing, which is an internal conflict also in Uganda. These are riots, but the AU is quiet. So you're asking whether anybody will raise a voice? Nobody will.
It's a members club there, so you expect very little.
And an interesting trend that we're increasingly seeing across Africa, whereas elections were kind of seen as a measure of movement towards democratic dispensations, right now elections, as Dina says, are actually like a therapy session, like almost ticking the box and saying we did it, but in actual fact it is almost being used now to legitimize the illegitimate, Yvonne.
Indeed, that's right. And
yeah, and we need to move on.
Yes,
so
yes.
just one quick
you know, I mean, I will make it quick. When it comes to the elections, there's 2.5 million new voters who've been registered to participate in this poll that's taking place a little over 2 months from now, bringing their total voter register to 17.7 million. million voters, many of them young. Will this be the opportunity when they start to make a change towards that? You know, with 5 of the candidates on a party ticket, 6 of them who are running, you know, as independent candidates. In fact, one of the candidates is a young 24-year-old man called John Katumba. You know, let's see what happens with the youthful thing. And I wanted to just talk about, you know, the AU very quickly. You know, that old boys club, and when I say old, I mean, you know, old, advanced in age. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Africa is teeming with young people, calling them the future, we're calling them restless, we're saying they are, you know, depending on which way, you know, things go, they're either an asset or otherwise. I think we're seeing hopefully a transition from the old to the new. Bobi Wine was youthful, catchy, all about social justice, anti-corruption, 38 years old. Museveni, 76, status quo. It's only a matter of time before things start to, you know, show up or blow up around the continent.
Just in case you didn't realize, he's half.
He's half, yeah.
Exactly
his age.
That's right, yeah.
Joe, there's someone here who says...
But also lessons to learn. Kenya is also facing an election very soon,
yep.
in the 2 years. Looking at what has happened in Tanzania, looking at what is happening in Uganda, there are quite some lessons that Kenya and Kenyans need to draw from the 2 elections. I hope we will be the bigger person in the region by hopefully in 2022 conducting free, fair, credible elections, so that maybe we set the pace for our neighbors and the continent. Otherwise, if we see scenarios like we have seen in Uganda and in Tanzania, then we will have no moral authority to criticize Uganda and what we saw in Tanzania not so long ago.
An interesting thoughts on that youth bulge, the youth bulge that is everywhere around Africa right now, that it's like a double-edged sword. You manage it properly, you could harness that energy into something creative, something useful for the country, but if it's mismanaged, it could completely backfire. Now, when we return, we're going to be speaking about BBI back here, the reggae on pause, stopped, rewound, we don't know. The news gang is going to be back in a moment.